everybody. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Blazer Victory Podcast. John Duncan here, and of course, I'm joined as always with my co-hosts Jimmy Marion and Darian Smith. And guys, we are here to recap UAB's games, UAB's wins at Alabama A&M and at home against D2 Montevallo. But before we get started on recapping both of those games, this game recap episode and all game recap episodes this season are brought to you by Cahaba Brewing. And this week, I've really been loving the blonde, which of course is their most popular beer and one of their core beers at Cahaba. And also in the tap room, they have a special edition of the blonde, their holiday blonde. So it is a tap room exclusive. So if you have not already, go down to the Cahaba Brewing Company's tap room and check out many of their fine beer selections as well as cocktail menu. So much they offer at Cahaba. But we want to thank you, Cahaba, again for sponsoring the Blazer Victory podcast and all game recap episodes of the pod. But guys, UAB was able to get it done. Both games, get a 2-game winning streak and get rid of that 3-game skid that UAB was on. UAB defeats Alabama A&M 93-82 in Huntsville, and then Sunday defeating D2 Montevallo 92-56. And guys, we were talking a little bit before we started recording. You really can't take a whole lot out of both of these games because let's be frank, these were 2 games that UAB was supposed to win and win handily. But Jimmy, where do you want to start when you just look at both of these games?
I want to start with Eric Gaines. I want to talk
Yes.
a little bit about EG because credit needs to be given to EG as it relates to his facilitating of the offense this past week. So if I'm looking at the box score right, versus Alabama A&M, Eric Gaines was credited with 8 assists, and he had 10 assists against Montevallo. Math's not great, but that's 18 assists in 2 games. So I think it's a big deal. I like to see EG play in that fashion to get his other teammates involved. Against Alabama A&M, he did hit 2 much-needed threes as well to help out. But really, at this point, it's just a nice bright spot to see both EG facilitating offensively and when he does for his shooters around him to make shots. That's been a problem for the UAB offense this season, but it was good to see some of the shots go in and EG to get some confidence facilitating the ball.
And Darian, I'll throw it to you. What were you able to take out of these 2 games?
Yeah, I'm glad that Jimmy started there with EG because that's one thing I was looking at. And I thought to myself, I think EG has been struggling to find identity for himself at times, and I thought that game was a perfect model for him. And I thought about young prime Russell Westbrook, right? Young prime Westbrook was not a 3-point shot maker or nothing like that, but he used his athleticism and he used his explosiveness to get to the rim, and he was a hell of a passer. He would dish it off, and I think that's something that EG can do. He has the athleticism. He has although it's inconsistent, he does have the knack. He has the passing chops. He can get downhill and he can spray the ball out. He can get the ball inside. He can make good passes. He can do that. I think that's a prime model for his game, and I think that's how he should go. I don't like the score first kind of mentality that sometimes that he can get into. I think that's the good thing with games like that. You can find out who you are. You can find out your basketball identity or refine it. And I just think that's what he can do. Just prime Russell Westbrook, use your athleticism, mix it with your IQ, take open shots, take good shots, and I think that's the starting point for him.
Yeah, great discussion, guys, on EG, and I agree with both of you. I do want to bring up, how about Yax's performance again? Especially in the A&M game, 16 points, 4 of 6 from the field, 15 rebounds. I mean, really, and 3 blocks too. He's really carrying the team when you really sense at times that, hey, JD's kind of moving slow, or Eric Gaines, it's having some slow moments, but it was great to see EG finally get it together, like Darian just mentioned. But I appreciate Yax, and I know he only had 10 points, I think, in Montevallo. Let me check. Yeah, he had 10 points. But again, Yax really seems to be getting better on the court and finding himself. And guys, let's face it, when we when we were tied up at halftime at Alabama A&M, you're thinking like, oh my gosh, what in the world is going on? Here we go. Are we really about to struggle against Alabama A&M, one of the worst teams in the country? But credit to the team finding defense in the second half, only giving up. I know we gave up 45 in the first half. Well, still, 37 points. Yeah, so kind of getting better defensively speaking, at least in the second half. And that's something we definitely need to see going forward. I know we've got two really big non-conference opponents in the next couple weeks that if you give up 80 plus, especially to Drake Friday, you're probably going to find yourself in the L column. But guys, what do you think that they are slowly getting it together defensively? I mean, yeah, you can't take much out of the Montevallo game, but only give up 56 points. But I was at the game, able to see the first half in person, and they looked a little better defensively. But I mean, like I just said, you can't take a whole lot out about at that game. But the second half, in particular, to the A&M, I thought they looked a lot better.
Hey, I want to just, before we jump away from the Yaks discussion, I'm glad you brought him up too, because, when you look at Ken Palm, he's now essentially the second most significant contributor outside of Gaines, like on this team, through the games we've held thus far. And he's really came on. He's the player. I know he's had a few games in which he likely would have wanted to perform better than he did statistically, but I would argue that, again, I think back to that exhibition game where I saw Yax for the first time in UAB uniform and where he is today. And he's been by far, in my opinion, the one that has progressed the most. And even just you mentioned some of them, John. Just looking at the Alabama A&M, and when you add in that Arkansas State game, he had back-to-back games in which he totaled roughly 33 points, 25 rebounds, 9 assists, 8 blocks, and 5 steals. I mean, that's unreal. So he was on a heater, and he's showing glimpses of what this coaching staff thought they were going to get. Just his ability to rebound the ball, at the rate that he does, and now he started to really take the ball down the court to get to try to help get those transition opportunities. So he's really impacting the game in a lot of ways, and I'm excited to see what he's able to do against an opponent like Drake and throughout conference play. But I just wanted to kind of shout out that as it relates to the defensive side of it. Yes, there was moments against Montevallo where I would say it was better. Alabama A&M came out, and AK talked about it post game. I don't think they were hitting but 3 or 4 threes a game. They hit 11, so they just kind of got in the heater themselves. But I would say the biggest thing defensively I noticed specifically in the Montevallo game was just effort wise. Schematically, it wasn't anything different. I didn't really feel as if we were doing anything different. But that's just my amateur eye looking at it. I just thought that people locked in more, and I think that made a difference because we've talked about it on numerous episodes, whether it's on this show or on the Patreon. But we're talking about our opportunities to score in the fast break and points off turnover and how important that is for this team as they struggle to find their identity in their production shooting the ball. And yesterday was a good example in which, 38 points off turnovers, and what is this, 36 points and fast break. It looks like that's a season high. And actually, yeah, I think that's one of the season highs in both of those categories. So it was just a really good, effort by UAB defense.
Yeah, I really like what Yax has been progressing to as the season went on. Like we saw the film before he signed with UAB. We knew what type of athlete he was. We knew what type of competitor he was. A lot of times, with guys that are still raw, though, they still have to have some kind of skill development depending on what level they're on. So he still was a pretty raw prospect coming out. And I think these games these beginning games, just getting used to the crowd, getting used to the basketball atmosphere. You can actually feel him getting comfortable out there. You can see it. I can feel it coming through his tweets. Right. He seems like such a positive personality, just a positive soul, and seems like he sees the good in everything. And I'm glad he's on our team because we need that. as far as attitude and culture on this team, we just need somebody that's working hard, improving, getting better individually, and I really hope that attitude can filter down through the team. I think it was welcome for Daniel Ortiz. He was a guy that's able to find his shot, able to hit some shots, and you can tell that it was a load off of him just hearing him talk. I feel like he's just excited to see the ball go down, like consistently, able to really help the team, and that's got to be hard for a guy, coming from North Alabama, who's the guy there. And he was just missing. It was nothing more to it. And sometimes shooters shoot, and sometimes shooters get into slumps. And he had a nice amount of steals against Montevallo too. Christian Coleman, I think it helped. He seemed the guy to be struggling. I think he only scored 8 and 9 in those 2 games. But those plays that he scored on, that's important. I can't remember if it was versus Montevallo or A&M when he scored back to back. He got a steal and he was pumped up. And I'm not looking at the raw stat sheets, right? I'm looking at the emotion. I'm looking at people. I'm looking at some of that losing mentality that infiltrated through the locker room. I'm looking at some of that come off. You see the steam come off, like finally, here we go. So to see guys like Daniel Ortiz and see guys like Christian Coleman, like win, lose, or draw, we're gonna have to depend on those guys. Point blank, that's what they were signed for. And Christian Coleman for his utility, and Daniel Ortiz for his sniper, his shooting. So hopefully that carries over. But yeah, I know we started off on Yax, but shout out to Yax just becoming an all utility man. Does it all. What you need: points, rebounds, assists, blocks. That has to filter through the team, and I just hope that guys continue to build and continue to find an identity individually, and then that can coalesce into a team. The team can find an identity. I really don't know what's going on with the defense. We started off so positive, I feel like, in the beginning of the year on the defensive side. We were scrappy. We would trap you. We would turn you over. We was quick. We were explosive. I can't tell you, what happened to the defense, but hopefully the efforts from A&M and Montevallo, hopefully that we get back to that team we were against Bradley, against Clemson. We were a scrappy team, right? And I think we can still be that. But maybe some of that losing. You guys ever play basketball and you miss a couple shots and you drop your shoulders and you just kind of like, you don't really want to play defense.
Darian, John and I miss every shot, so yeah, we know what you're talking about.
That's true.
But maybe that's what happened to a lot of the team, and it affected the spirit of those just getting after it. But hopefully we can learn from that instead of just dropping our shoulders. Let us missing some shots, maybe just say, hey, we're going through a draw. Our defense would carry us over. Don't drop your shoulders. Don't hold your head. Keep going after it, guys. And hopefully these 2 games were get-right games and we learn, and we can be the team that we actually are, going forward, because we're going to see against a really good team coming up. So,
yeah, shout out, hey, you brought up Daniel Ortiz. Shout out to Daniel Ortiz for getting 1,000 career points in the Montevallo game. So that's a huge achievement for him in his career. But Darian's right, you like to see shots start falling. I was listening to the radio broadcast, and I think was it Steve Mitchell or was it Mo on the radio broadcast? I think it was Mo on the radio broadcast for Montevallo. I could be wrong though, but he said that it's a lot easier to play motivated defense when shots start falling. When they're able to get in rhythm and those shots start falling, it's easy to be more motivated and play good team defense, because like Darian just mentioned, when you miss a couple shots and you're like, oh man, here we go again, your shoulder slump, and you just get in that negative mindset. But hey, it's just going to be an effort thing here going forward for this UAB team. But they're gonna have to bring it this Friday against Drake. And guys, that's probably our end of analysis of these two games because I mean it's Alabama A&M and Montevallo. No disrespect to either program, but for UAB, you know, they won both games, which was good. And I really don't have any more analysis unless you guys have anything that we, that we missed. Okay, no, okay. Well, looking forward to Drake. You look at Ken Palm. This is going to be a top 75 team heading into this game Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Hopefully, everybody can make it down to Bartow. I cannot because the game's at 2 o'clock. So hopefully, people aren't in my situation, but I just can't make it out on a Friday afternoon. But it will be on ESPN Plus, so I will be able to watch. I know Jimmy will be in the building with Big Jim, with Hatton, with
All the
Hampton.
kiddos, the whole
All
fam.
the kiddos, yes, there you go. So he's gonna bring the noise.
It's probably not going to be the noise people want to hear, though. It's probably going to be baby crying and running up to the bathroom.
Hey, what's up with the mob? What happened with the student section when what's that?
Jimmy, because it happened right after I left, because there was no student section, but I heard on Twitter that
Well, I texted Ransom that group and I said, y'all can come in now. John left. But
they stormed in.
So here's
who
the
was
deal: is that Ransom is like a, from what I understand, I think it's like a religious group on campus that Trey Jemison was involved with previously, and so there was a connection there, and that's why they came out in prior years and were really, giving love to Trey, but not just Trey, but to everybody. And they arrived in the second half. And they stood up. The entire one section there in the corner was full. And they stood up from the moment that they arrived, cheered every single moment. I mean, were loud. It was really cool. But, what's funny is, first of all, shout out to them. If we
Shout
had,
out,
yeah, if we had Ransom there every game, or if we just had a student section, regardless of, what group they're affiliated with, they're doing that every game. You can tell it made a big difference. Yaks, they loved Yaks. They were yelling. They were saying, "We want Yaxel," like late, like in the game. And then Yaks went over there after and was celebrating with them, as did Daniel Ortiz. You could tell Yaks like really was vibing with them, and vice versa. And speaking earlier of Darren talking about just like Yaks coming out of his shell, so you saw a lot of that. So the players thought it was a big deal. They were dancing. I was watching the bench, like Yaks and like Coleman, that were watching them dance like while like they're in the huddle, like having a good time. Like it was apparent they were there. Everybody enjoyed it, and it would make a big difference if we had that type of engagement from students. It's funny, I saw a fan or two go over there and was just like commending them, like, thank you for being here. But isn't that kind of funny that it's like you're seeing like an extinct animal show up and people are like, oh my God, people are standing up, people are clapping, students are here. It shouldn't be that way, right? It shouldn't be that difficult. And hopefully that improves, but it certainly, the team didn't need it, but I know the team certainly appreciated it.
Yeah, and I feel like it's been this way for a while with the students, man. I've aired my grievances before about the students. I just remember how it was when I was at UAB and just going to the basketball games. I just remember the frenzy. It used to be, we used to have the camp out for those Memphis game tickets. It was just a lot more spirit, a lot more pandemonium. I feel like in the basketball and football games, our student section need to step it up. Like that's just how I feel. We need that spirit back. We need, and it's gonna start with the students. Right, you can't put it on people like Darian Smith. Like I'm a 34-year-old man with 4 kids. Like I'm working my ass off half the time. I go when I can. Like I go when I can. No way I can make it on Friday at 2 o'clock. There's no way. I gotta go make some money. I got bills, right? But if I'm a student, I'm on campus. I ain't doing nothing else, man. Like, who cares if you fail your test once or twice? Like whatever. You can study later. You ain't doing nothing but getting drunk later on, bro. Just go to the game and have fun. Have fun and cheer the team on. We need that spirit.
Speaking of financially supporting Darian Smith, if you are not a Patreon supporter of the Blazer Victory podcast, check out the Blazer
Hey,
Victory podcast Patreon.
What a segue.
We just had a good football portal and recruiting discussion last week, didn't we, John? If you want to check that out.
Yeah, we might need to
Yes.
scrap a little thing that we talked about, but hey, that's the name of the game. That's what you get into recruiting for. You know,
That's
you're
right.
gonna have flips and everything, but so hey, signing day for football, early signing day is Wednesday. So expect something out later again for the Patreon. So patreon.com/blazerpod. Only $5 a month gets you access to all exclusive content on the Patreon. So help support us at Blazer Victory and help spread the word. But guys, I know we're at 20 minutes and this is going to be a short episode, but I did fail to mention earlier that I had written down James White is taking a leave of absence from the team. You know that's the Ole Miss transfer. What was it? Personal reason or undisclosed? I can't remember the quote from AK. But basically, he's not on the team right now. You look at Vasquez did not play against Montevallo. Now that was due to just caution, so he should be back for the Drake game Friday. But guys, Friday 2 o'clock, Drake, ESPN Plus. How are we feeling heading into UAB's game against Drake? I mean, this is a 10-1, probably going to be an 11-1 team because they play tomorrow night against somebody I forgot, but they'll probably win that game.
Alcorn.
Alcorn. Okay. Well, hey, maybe
Here's a
Alcorn will give
common
them a
opponent.
game. Yeah, maybe we'll see how bad they beat them.
Hey,
But
how am I feeling? I'm feeling nervous. But before we talk about why I'm feeling nervous, let's talk about why my wife Natalie is excited about Drake. Because do y'all know who is the assistant coach, director of player development for the Drake?
Drake.
Yeah. Y'all
Who
know
is
who?
it?
Nick Norton.
Oh
Nick
man.
Norton will be back in the building, Bartow Arena.
Can we get a green and gold jersey for him and he can kind of sneak in
That's
and
what's up.
Well, we love some of his 3-point shooting,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
No, that's one of the top reasons why Natalie was like circling that in the calendar. She hasn't been able to come to a game, and she was like, "This one in Memphis, I'm going to for two very different reasons." But Drake is pretty good. I mean, there's no getting around it. You mentioned earlier, John, top 75 in Ken Palm throughout this year. I'm looking at their schedule here. Here's what stands out to me is they played a lot of teams that are ranked outside the top 100 in terms of Ken Palm, but in games in which they played opponents that are ranked, however you want to phrase it, 99 or 47, that being in Akron or Nevada, they've won decidedly. I'm looking here, Akron, I believe, was 99 in Ken Palm, and they won that game by 20 points. They also played Nevada, who's a top 50 Ken Palm team, on a neutral court, and they won that game by 19 points. So they're beating teams they should, and when they play opponents that are good, they're taking care of business. So, that's a very positive thing to look at for them. The way that UAB has played thus far this season, this is going to be an extremely difficult game. You talk about the atmosphere. I don't anticipate Ransom being there to get everybody uplifted on a Friday afternoon. Hell of a schedule, or hell of a scheduling opportunity for Drake to come into Bartow. And can you guys imagine what this would have felt like? If it were students on campus, maybe like a Thursday night game, like TV, like it would have been like a completely different atmosphere. But they're coming in here in a game where they'll likely be favored, and UAB is likely going to have to play as good as I guess going back to the multi-tournament event we played in, we are playing Clemson, we are playing Maryland. Like UAB is going to have to find that kind of defensive effort and that kind of just overall effort by the team to keep this ball game close. So I haven't done a lot of research on Drake. I have not watched Drake play. Drake is a successful program. You always expect them to be competitive, and it looks like this season, based on the fact they're likely going to be 11-1, that this is going to be one heck of a challenge, but one hell of an opportunity for this UAB team to really make somewhat of a resume, building win, but gain some much needed confidence heading into conference play.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at it, and I see wins against like some names I know in the basketball world, like St. Louis. Now I actually don't know how good St. Louis is this year, but that's a name I know in the basketball world. And you mentioned Nevada, but I'm looking at they got smashed by Stephen F. Austin. I wonder what's the context behind that, because all of a sudden to go there, Stephen F. Austin is not it's not one of them. They got smashed 92-68. Like,
hey,
help
bro,
me
look at that. Just looking at that box score of that game, Stephen F. Austin was 14 of 23 from three. So that's
maybe they was just getting lit up, and it's
We can
like
do
this.
that. We can hit 14 threes if you give us 3 games.
But then I look back and I'm seeing an opponent in like Grambling State, and Grambling State is horrible. Like, Alcorn would wipe the floor with them, and I see that they beat them by 12, right? Like, that's not impressive to me, So, what kind of team am I looking at here? I don't know. I haven't watched them play. It's a lot of basketball games, so I haven't watched them play. But they've only lost one game. But the one game they lost was like, okay, and I'm starting to it make you kind of look at the resume and say, all right, like, how good is, because we know McNeese is good. McNeese State, we know the teams that we played are good. My page is going off. Sorry, guys.
Oh, you're good. And I was just gonna say, it's just an
go ahead.
opportunity, Darren. Obviously, Drake is gonna come in as the favorite in this game, but it's just a really good opportunity for this UAB team. And really, UAB hasn't faced a really good basketball team since McNeese. So this is, a really good opportunity to. I know we've lost games, Southern Miss, Arkansas State, of course.
We got smashed by Southern Miss,
yeah.
Was that we got smashed by somebody else too?
Arkansas State, yeah. But
you look at Bradley, who we played early, right? The first game, and they're ranked 126 currently in KenPom. Speaking of Bradley, I feel like they've kind of really they've dropped 4 straight contests. I don't know what the heck happened with those guys, because they were looking good there early on. But yeah, I think for all 3 of us, what we're gonna have to do between now and game time is to watch a little bit more of Drake. I think most of what we would agree upon is that we respect the program. They were in the Assembly tournament last year. They've got a heck of a good, coaching staff, including a former Blazer great, and they have a go-to player in Tucker DeVries. I don't know how you say it, but I recognize the name just from watching, games in March, end of last season, and that guy's 6'7", 210. He can do a lot, and he's going to be their go-to player and the most impactful player, number 12. And he's certainly someone that you don't want to get a heater going. Like, who was that guy in Montevallo, number 21, that looked like he should be playing in the NBA in the first half? He had like 17 points or something. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So you can't let a guy like number 12 for Drake get hot early. And in my opinion, it's going to start just like any other game. We know what we do well. We know we get to the free throw line well. We've got to convert on those opportunities regardless of the opponent. We know we offensive rebound the ball well. We've got to do that, regardless of the opponent. And something that we also need to do regardless of the opponent is show effort defensively, as we talked about earlier in the episode, to help us get through some lags offensively, to get those easy transition buckets. I believe every single one of Eric Gaines' scored buckets against Montevallo were just off steals, slam dunks, layups, which is great. And we're going to need all of that kind of effort from our guards on Friday against Drake.
All right, I think we're good. Hey, it's all about just improving until conference play. After New Year's, conference play starts in the AAC. So you've got 2 really good opportunities with Drake this Friday and then next Friday against UNC Asheville. But I think that's a wrap for this episode. Guys, thank you for listening to the Blazer Victory podcast. Again,
We can't
subscribe.
stick around for an hour and talk about football recruiting and transfer portal on signing day.
Patreon.com/BlazerPod. Hey, real quick, yeah, I saw somebody on one of those Facebook groups saying asking for recruiting content, and they're not going to pay for any site or podcast because that this information should be free, and that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, man. Because we pride ourselves
Who
in.
said that?
I don't even remember the person's name, but I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, we charge $5, and I know Magic City Impact just charges like $10. Like, you can't pay that a month, but you want somebody to give you free information on a Facebook post when you could do the research yourself. It's going to take you a while, but you can do it. But just that kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I really love the work that we do here with Blazer Victory Podcast. And I know Steve and Tim do a great job, on Magic City Impact. So support us and support them because we all do great work in trying to fill that void that, has been left for a long time with UAB.
Bro, I like think about this stuff like way too much. Like you take a shower, I'm like, well, if we reshuffle here at right guard, we get Flournoy back, and we have, if we can land another JUCO, like I'm going through like how many roster spots of O linemen or how many D linemen on the team, how we can rotate it and make it work. Who's most likely to enter the transfer portal if these guys? I'm like sitting down randomly at work. I just came from out of a ceiling or something. I'm just like, or I'm like in the ceiling, like, yeah, if we do get Jaquan Mason at outside linebacker, like because we went over so much stuff, we went over so much material. We know where a lot of these guys' social media is at. We kind of know who they're following. And we kind of can try to pick up breadcrumbs. We're trying to get UAB Athletics fan back on Twitter so he can really he can help us.
Amen to that.
So it's like it's so many. I mean, like I get messages and we in group messages on Twitter with some UAB folks and stuff, and they trying to help figure it out. And it's just a lot that go into it. So if you think it's a game, it is not a game. We've kind of got obsessive over it. I enjoy it, but it's definitely worth $5 a freaking month. Come on, man.
Come on now.
Yeah, I got empathy for the modern day fan because we're all fans and we're asked to spend money here, there, and everywhere to support our program. That's just the nature of it. So it's like the $5. We've been told by people that know what they're talking about, right, guys, that $5 we should have been charging more than that.
Yes, we have been told from outside media other than UAB that we need to charge double or triple the price, and we talked about it, and we're going to keep it at $5 for at least a while, because we understand. You talk about booster donation, you talk about Blazer Victory Podcast Patreon, you talk about season tickets, you talk about Magic City Impact, that, all that starts to add up, and then road trips, going to away games. So we realize, that fact. So we are going to keep it at $5 for now. And also, too, I should have mentioned earlier, if you want to prepay for a year membership of Blazer Victory Podcast, save 10%. Take advantage of that. And if you're a current member that's doing the $5 in your settings on the Patreon app, you can change it to a yearly to still take advantage of that 10% discount. But Darian, you want to send us out until next time?
Yeah, y'all pay attention to Patreon. I'm really, really excited about some of these recruiting news. Some of these I get excited during this time. So y'all check it out. We'll be on there soon. But Blazer Nation, just blaze.
Memphis sucks.